The Story of the City of Brass from the 1001 Nights. There was in olden time in Damascus of Syria a king named Abd el-Malik, the son of Marwan, and he was sitting one day having with him the great men of his empire consisting of kings and sultans, when a discussion took place among them respecting the traditions of former nations. They called to mind the stories of Solomon, son of David, and the dominion which God had bestowed upon him over mankind, and the jinn, and the birds, and the wild beasts. And they said, "We have heard from those who were before us, that God bestowed not upon anyone the power of which he bestowed upon Solomon, so that he used to imprison the jinn and the devils in bottles of brass, and pour molten lead over them, and seal a cover over them with his signet." Then Talib, one of the sultans, related that a man once embarked in a ship with a company of others, and they voyaged to the island of Sicily, and ceased not in their course until there arose against them a wind which bore them away to an unknown land. This happened during the black darkness of night. And when the day shone forth, there came out to them from caves in that land people of black complexion and with naked bodies, like wild beasts not understanding speech. They had a king of their own race, and none of them knew Arabic save their king. So when they saw the ship and those who were in her, he came forth to them, attended by a party of his companions, and saluted them and welcomed them. They acquainted him with their state, and he said to them, "No harm shall befall you. There hath not come to us any one of the sons of Adam before you." And he entertained them with a banquet of the flesh of birds, and of wild beasts, and of fish. And after this, the people of the ship went down to divert themselves in the city. And they found one of the fishermen who had cast his net into the sea to catch fish. And he drew it up, and lo, in it was a bottle of brass stopped with lead, which was sealed with the signet of Solomon the son of David. And the fisherman came forth and broke it, whereupon there proceeded from it a blue smoke, which united with clouds of heaven. And they heard a horrible voice saying, "Repentance, repentance, O prophet of God." Then of that smoke there was formed a person of terrible aspect, of terrible make, whose head would reach as high as of a mountain. And he disappeared before their eyes. And to the people of the ship their hearts were almost eradicated, but the blacks thought nothing of the event. And a man returned to the king, and asked him respecting this, and the king answered him, "Know that this is one of the jinn, whom Solomon the son of David, when he was incensed against them, imprisoned in these bottles. And he poured lead over them, and threw them into the sea. When the fisherman casteth his net, it generally bringeth up these bottles, and when they are broken, there cometh forth from them a jinn, who imagineth that Solomon is still living. Wherefore he repenteth and saith, Repentance, O prophet of God." And the prince of the faithful, Abd el-Malik, wondered at these words, and said, "By Allah, I desire to see some of those bottles." So Talib replied, "O prince of the faithful, thou art able to do so, and yet remain in thy country. Send to thy brother Abd el-Aziz, that he may write orders to the Emir Musa to journey from the western country to this mountain which we have mentioned, and bring thee what thou desire of these bottles, for the furthest tract of his province is adjacent to the mountain." And the prince of the faithful approved of this advice, and said, "O Talib, thou hast spoken truth, and I desire that thou may be messenger to Musa for this purpose." To this Talib replied, "Most willingly, O prince of the faithful." And the king said to him, "Go in dependence on the blessing of God and his aid." Then he gave orders that they should write for him a letter to his brother Abd al-Aziz in his victory in Egypt, and another letter to Musa, his viceroy in the western country, commanding him to journey himself in search of the bottles of Solomon. He sealed the 2 letters and delivered them to Talib, commanding him to hasten, and he gave him riches and riders and footmen to aid him in his way. So Talib went forth on his way to Egypt, and when the Emir showed Musa knew of his approach, he went forth to him and met him, and rejoiced at his arrival. And Talib handed to him the letter, so he took it and read it and understood its meaning. And he put it upon his head, saying, I hear and obey the command of the Prince of the Faithful. He determined to summon his great men, and they presented themselves, and he inquired of them respecting that of which he had been made known to him by the letter, whereupon they said, O Emir, if thou desire him who will guide thee to that place, have recourse to the Sheikh Abd al-Samad, for he is a knowing man, and hath traveled much, and he is acquainted with the deserts and wastes and the seas, and their inhabitants and their wonders, and the countries and their districts. Have recourse, therefore, to him, and he will direct thee to the object of thy desire. Accordingly, he gave orders to bring him, and he came before him, and lo, he was a very old man, whom the vicissitudes of years and times had rendered him decrepit. The Emir Musa saluted him and said to him, O Sheikh Abd al-Samad, our Lord, the Prince of the Faithful, hath commanded us thus, and thus I possess little knowledge of that land, and hath been told to me that thou art acquainted with that country and the routes. Hast thou then a wish to accomplish the affair of the Prince of the Faithful? The Sheikh replied, Know, O Emir, that this route is difficult, far extending with few tracks. The Emir then said to him, How long a period doth it require? He answered, It is a journey of 2 years, and some months going, and the like returning. And on the way are difficulties and horrors and extraordinary and wonderful things. But, he said, God will assuredly make this affair easy to us, through the blessing attendant upon me, O Viceroy of the Prince of the Faithful. After this they departed, and they continued their journey until they arrived at a palace, whereupon the Sheikh said, Advance with us to this palace, which presenteth a lesson to him who would be admonished. So the Emir Musa advanced thither together with the Sheikh Abd al-Samad and his chief companions, till they came to his entrance. And they found it open, and having lofty angles and steps, among which were 2 wide steps of colored marbles, the like of which hath not been seen. The ceilings and walls were decorated with gold and silver and minerals, and over the entrance was a slab whereupon was an inscription in ancient Greek. And the Sheikh Abd al-Samad said, Shall I read it, O Emir? The Emir answered, Advance and read. So he read it, and lo, it was poetry, and it was this. Here were a people whom after their works thou shalt see wept over for their lost dominion. And in this palace, in the last information respecting, lords collected in the dust. Death hath destroyed them and disunited them, and in the dust they have lost what they amassed, as though they had only put down their loads to rest a while. Quickly have they departed. And the Emir Musa wept and said, There is no deity but God, the living, the enduring, without failure. Then they attentively viewed the palace, and lo, it was devoid of inhabitants, destitute of household and occupants. Its courts were desolate, and its apartments were deserted, and in the midst of it was a chamber covered with a lofty dome, rising high into the air, around which were 400 tombs. And the Emir Musa drew near to the dome-crowned chamber, and lo, it had 8 doors of sandalwood, with nails of gold ornamented with stars of silver set with various jewels. And he beheld it in a long tomb of terrible appearance, whereon was a tablet of iron of China, and the Shika Ab-es-Samad drew near to it, and read its inscription, and lo, on it was written, "Shouldest thou think upon me after the length of my age, and the vicissitudes of days and circumstances? I am the son of Shidad, who held dominion over mankind, and each tract of the whole earth. All the stubborn troops became an abject unto me, and Esh-Sham from Misir unto Andan. In glory I reigned, abasing their kings, the people of the earth fearing my dominion. And I beheld the tribes and armies in my power, and saw the countries and their inhabitants dread me. When I mounted, I beheld my army, comprising 1,000,000 bridles upon neighing steeds, and I possessed wealth that could not be calculated, which I treasured up against misfortunes, determining to devote the whole of my property for the purpose of extending the term of my life. But the deity would not save the execution of his purpose, and thus I became separated from my brethren. Death, the disuniter of mankind, came to me, and I was removed from grandeur to the mansion of contempt, and I found the recompense of all my past actions for which I am pledged, for I was sinful. Then raise thyself, lest thou be upon a brink, and beware of calamities, mayest thou be led aright." And again the Amir Musa wept in considering the fates of the people, after which, as they were going about through the different apartments of the palace, and viewing attentively its chambers and its palaces of diversion, and they came to a table upon 4 legs of alabaster, whereupon was inscribed, "Upon this table have eaten 1,000 one-eyed kings, and 1,000 kings, each sound in both eyes. All of them have quitted the world and taken up their abode in the burial grounds in the caves." And the Amir Musa wrote down all this. Then he went forth and took not with him from the palace aught save the table. The soldiers proceeded with the Sheikh Ab-es-Samad before them, shewing the way until all the first day had passed, and the second and the third. Then they came to a high hill, at which they looked, and lo, upon it was a horseman of brass, on the top of whose spear was wide and glistening head that almost deprived the beholder of sight, and on it was inscribed, "O thou who comest unto me, if thou know not the way that leadeth to the city of brass, rub the hand of the horseman, and he will turn, and then will stop, and in whatsoever direction he stoppeth, thither proceed without fear and without difficulty, for it will lead to the city of brass." And when the Amir Musa had rubbed the hand of the horseman, it turned like the blinding lightning, and faced a different direction from that in which they were traveling. The party therefore turned thither and journeyed on, and it was the right way. They took that route and continued their course the same day and the next night until they had traversed a wide tract of country. And as they were proceeding, one day they came to a pillar of black stone, wherein was a person sunk to his armpits, and he had 2 huge wings, and 4 arms, 2 of them like those of the sons of Adam, and 2 like the forelegs of lions with claws. He had hair upon his head like the tails of horses, and 2 eyes like 2 burning coals. And he had a 3rd eye in his forehead, like the eye of the lynx, from which there appeared sparks of fire. He was black and tall, and was crying out, "Extolled be the perfection of my Lord, who hath appointed me this severe affliction and painful torture until the day of resurrection. When the party beheld him, their reason fled from them, and they were stupefied at the sight of his form, and retreated in flight. And the Emir Musa said to Sheikh Absal al-Samad, "What is this?" He answered, "I know not what he is." And the Emir said, "Draw near to him and investigate his case. Perhaps he will discover it, and perhaps thou wilt learn his story." So the Sheikh Samad drew near to him and said to him, "O thou person, what is thy name, and what is thy nature, and what hath placed thee here in this manner?" And the person answered him, "As to me, I am an Efarit of the jinn, and my name is Dahashish, and I am restrained here by the majesty of God." Then the Emir Musa said, "O Sheikh Ab-es Samad, ask him what is the cause of his confinement in this pillar." He therefore asked respecting that, and the Efarit answered him, "Verily, my story is wonderful, and it is this. There belonged to one of the sons of Iblis an idol of red carnelian, of which I was made guardian, and there used to worship it one of the kings of the sea, of great glory, leading amongst his troops of the jinn 1,000,000 warriors, who smote with swords before him, and who answered his prayer in the cases of difficulty. These jinn who obeyed him were under my command and authority, following my words when I ordered them. All of them were in rebellion against Solomon, the son of David, and I used to enter the body of the idol and command it them, and then forbid them. Now, the daughter of that king was a frequent adorer of the idol, assiduous in the worship of it, and she was the handsomest of the people of her age, endowed with the beauty and loveliness and elegance and perfection, and I described her to Solomon, on whom be peace. So he sent to her father, saying to him, "Marry to me thy daughter, and break thy carnelian idol, and bear witness that there is no deity but God, and that Solomon is the prophet of God. But if thou refuse, I will come to thee with forces that shall leave thee like yesterday that hath passed." And when the message of Solomon came to him, the king of the sea was insolent, and magnified himself, and was proud. Then he said to his advisers, "What say ye respecting the affair of Solomon? For he hath sent demanding my daughter, and commanding me to break my carnelian idol, and to adopt his faith." And they replied, "O great king, can Solomon do aught unto thee when thou art in the midst of this vast sea? He cannot prevail against thee, since the jinn will fight on thy side, and thou shalt seek aid against him of thine idol that thou worshippest. The right opinion is that thou consult thy red carnelian idol, and hear what shall be his reply. If he counsel thee to fight him, but otherwise do not." And upon this the king went immediately, and going to his idol, after he had offered a sacrifice and slain victims, fell down before it prostrate, and began to weep and seek counsel. Thereupon I entered the body of the idol by reason of my ignorance and my solicitude respecting the affair of Solomon, and recited this couplet: "As for me, I am not in fear of him, for I am acquainted with everything. If he wish to wage war with me, I will go forth, and I will snatch his soul from him." So when the king had heard my reply to him, his heart was strengthened, and he determined to wage war with Solomon, the prophet of God, and to fight against him. Accordingly, when the messenger of Solomon came, he inflicted upon him a painful beating, and returned him a shameful reply. And he sent to threaten Solomon, saying to him by the messenger, "Dost thou threaten me with false words? Either come thou to me, or I will go to thee." The messenger returned to Solomon and acquainted him with all that he had occurred. And when the prophet of God heard that his resolution was roused, and he prepared his forces, consisting of jinn and men and wild beasts and birds and reptiles, he commanded his vizier Ed-Dimiriat, the king of jinn, to collect them from every place. So he collected for him the devils 600 millions. He also commanded Asaph, his vizier of men, to collect his soldiers of mankind, and their number was 1,000,000 or more. He made ready to the accoutrements and weapons, and mounted with his forces upon the magic carpet, with the birds flying over his head, and the wild beasts beneath the carpet, marching until he alighted upon his enemy's coast, and surrounded his island, having filled the land with the forces. He then sent out to our king, saying to him, "Behold, I have arrived, therefore submit thyself to my authority, and acknowledge my mission, and break thine idol, and worship the one, the adorned God, and marry to me thy daughter according to the law, and say thou and those who are with thee, I testify that there is no deity but God, and I testify that Solomon is the prophet of God. If thou say that, peace and safety shall be thy lot. But if thou refuse, defending thyself from me, and this island shall not prevent thee. For God hath commanded the wind to obey me, and I will order it to convey me unto thee on a carpet, and will make thee an example to restrain others." So the messenger came to him, and communicated to him the message of the prophet. But the king said to him, "There is no way for the accomplishment of this thing that he requireth. Therefore inform him that I am coming forth unto him." Accordingly, the messenger returned to Solomon and gave him the reply. The king then sent to the people of his country and collected for himself of the jinn that were under his authority 1,000,000, and to these he added others of the devils that were in the islands and on the mountains, after which he made ready his forces and opened the armories and distributed to them the weapons. And as to the prophet of God, he disposed his troops, commanding the wild beasts to form themselves into 2 divisions, on the right of the people and on the left, commanding the birds to be upon the island. He ordered them also, when the assault should be made, to tear out the eyes of their antagonists with their beaks, and to beat their faces with their wings. And he ordered the wild beasts to tear in pieces their horses, and they replied, "We hear and obey God and thee, O prophet of God." Then Solomon sent forth for himself a couch of alabaster adorned with jewels and plated with plates of red gold, and he placed his vizier Asaph on the right, and his vizier Ed-Dimiriat on the left side, and the kings of mankind on his right, and the kings of the jinn on his left, and the wild beasts and the vipers and the serpents before him. After this they came upon us all together, and we contended with him in a wide tract for a period of 2 days, and a calamity befell us on the 3rd day, and the decree of God was executed among us. The first who charged upon Solomon were I and my troops, and I said to my companions, "Keep in your places in the battlefield, while I go forth to them and challenge Dimiriat." And lo, he came forth like a great mountain, and his fires flaming, and his smoke ascending. And he approached and smote me with a flaming fire, and his arrow prevailed over my fire. He cried out at me with a prodigious cry, so that I imagined the heaven had fallen, and the mountains shook at his voice. Then he commanded his companions, and they charged us all together, and we were charged upon them. The fires that rose and the smoke ascended. The hearts of the combatants were almost cleft asunder, and the battle raged. The birds fought in the air, the wild beasts in the dust, and I contended with Ed-Dimiriat until he wearied me, and I wearied him, after which my companions and troops were they ceased not to proceed until they arrived at it. and lo, it was lofty, strongly fortified, rising high into the air. Impenetrable, the height of its walls was 80 cubits, and it had 25 gates, none of which would open but by means of some artifice. They stopped before it and endeavored to discover one of its gates, but they could not. And the Emir Musa said to the Sheikha Abd el-Samad, "O Sheikha, I see not to this city any gate." The Sheikha replied, "O Emir, thus do I find it described in the Book of Hidden Treasures, that it hath 25 gates, and that none of its gates may be opened but from within the city. And how," said the Emir, "can we continue to enter it and divert ourselves with a view of its wonders?" Then the Emir Musa ordered one of his young men to mount a camel and ride round the city in a hope that he might discover a trace of a gate. So one of his young men mounted and proceeded around it for 2 days with their knights, prosecuting his journey with diligence and not resting. And when the 3rd day arrived, he came in sight of his companions, and he was astounded at that which he beheld of the extent of the city and its height. Then he said, "O Emir, the easiest place in it is this place at which ye have alighted." And thereupon the Emir Musa took Talib and the Sheikh Abd el-Samad, and they ascended to the mountain opposite the city, overlooking it. And when they had ascended that mountain, they saw a city then which eyes had not beheld any greater. Its pavilions were lofty, and its domes were shining. Its rivers were running, its trees were fruitful, and its gardens bore ripe produce. It was a city with impenetrable gates, empty, still, without a voice, but the owl hooting in its quarters, and the raven croaking in its thoroughfare streets, and bewailing those who had been in it. And the Emir Musa fainted with sorrow. His tears ran down upon his cheeks, and he said, "By Allah, indifference to the world is the most appropriate and the most sure course." And when they came back to the troops, they passed the day devising means of entering the city. And the Emir Musa said to those of his chief officers who were around him, "How shall we contrive to enter the city, that we may see its wonders? Perhaps we shall find in it something by which we may ingratiate ourselves with the Prince of the Faithful." Talib replied, "Let us make a ladder and mount upon it, and perhaps we shall gain access to the gate from within." And the Emir said, "This is what occurred to my mind, and an excellent is the advice." Then he called to the carpenters and the blacksmiths, and ordered them to make straight some pieces of wood, and to construct a ladder covered with plates of iron. And they did so, and made it strong. They employed themselves in constructing it a whole month, and many men were occupied in making it. And they set it up and fixed it against the wall, and it proved to be equal to the wall in height, and as though it had been made for it before that day. So the Emir Musa wondered at it and said, "God bless you, it seemeth from the excellence of your work, as though ye had adapted it by measurement to the wall." He then said to the people, "Which of you will ascend this ladder, and mount upon the wall, and walk along it, and contrive means of descending into the city, that he may see how the case is, and then inform us of the mode of opening the gate?" And one of them answered, "I will ascend it, O Emir, and descend and open the gate." The Emir therefore replied, "Mount, God bless thee." Accordingly, the man ascended to the ladder until he reached the top of it. When he stood and fixed his eye toward the city, he clapped his hands and cried out with his loudest voice, saying, "Thou art beautiful!" Then he cast himself down into the city and was destroyed. So the Emir Musa said, "If we do thus with all of our companions, there will not remain one of them one, and we shall be unable to accomplish our affair and the affair of the Prince of the Faithful. Depart ye, for we have no concern with this city. But one of them said, Perhaps another than this may be more steady than he. And a second ascended, and a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, and they ceased not to ascend that ladder to the top of the wall, one after another, until the 12th of the men had gone, acting as the first. And the Sheikh al-Samad said, There is none for this affair but myself, and the experienced is not like the inexperienced. But the Emir Musa said to them, Thou shalt not do that, nor will I allow thee to ascend to the top of this wall. For shouldest thou die, thou wouldest be the cause of the death of us all, and there would not remain any of us. 1. Since thou art the guide of the party. The Sheikah, however, replied, Perhaps the object will be accomplished by my means, through the will of God, whose name be exalted. And thereupon all the people agreed to his ascending. Then Ab-es-Samad arose, and having said, In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, he ascended the ladder, repeating the praises of God, and reciting the verses of safety until he reached the top of the wall. And when he clapped his hands and fixed his eyes, the people therefore all called out to him and said, O Sheikah Ab-es-Samad, do not cast thyself down. If Ab-es-Samad fall, we all shall perish. Then Ab-es-Samad sat a long time, repeating the praises of God and reciting the verses of safety, after which he rose with energy and called out with his loudest voice, O Emir, no harm shall befall you, for God hath averted from me the effect of the artifice of the devil. So the Emir said to him, What hast thou seen, O Sheikh? When he answered, When I reached the top of the wall, I beheld 10 damsels like moons, who made a sign with their hands, as though they would say, Come to us. It seemed to me that beneath the wall was a sea of water, whereupon I desired to cast myself down, as our companions did. But I beheld them dead, so I withheld myself from them, and recited some words of the Book of God, whereupon he averted from me the influence of those damsels, and they departed. Therefore I cast not myself down. There was no doubt that this is an enchantment which the people of the city contrived, in order to repel from it everyone who should wish to obtain access to it. He then walked along the wall until he came to the two towers of brass. When he saw that they had gates of gold, without any sign of the means of opening them, therefore the Sheikah, looking attentively, saw in the middle of one of the gates a figure of a horseman of brass, having one hand extended as though he were pointing with it, and on it was an inscription, which the Sheikah read, and lo, it contained these words, Turn the pin that is in the middle of the front of the horseman's body 12 times, and the gate will open. So he turned the pin 12 times, whereupon the gate opened immediately with a noise like thunder, and the Sheikah entered. He was a learned man, acquainted with all languages and characters, and he walked on until he entered a long passage, whence he descended some steps, and he found a place with handsome wooden benches, on which were people dead, and over their heads were elegant shields, and keen swords, and strung bows, and notched arrows. And behind the next gate were a bar of iron and barricades of wood, and locks of delicate fabric, and strong apparatus. Upon this the Sheikah said within himself, Perhaps the keys are with these people. He then looked, and lo, there was a Sheikah who appeared to be the oldest of them, and he was upon a high wooden bench among the dead men. So Ab-es-Samad said, May not the keys of the city be with this Sheikah? Perhaps he was the gatekeeper of the city, and these were under his authority. He therefore drew near to him, and lifted up his garments, and lo, the keys were hung to his waist. At the sight of them, Ab-es-Samad rejoiced exceedingly, and he took the keys and opened the locks, and pulled the gate and the barricades and the other apparatus, which opened, and the gate also opened, with a noise like thunder. Upon this, the Sheikah exclaimed, "God is most great," and the people made the same exclamation with him, rejoicing at the event. The Emir Musa also rejoiced in the safety of Ab es-Samad and the opening of the gate of the city. The people thanked him for that which he had done, and all the troops hastened to enter the gate. But the Emir Musa cried out to them, saying, "O people, if all of us enter, we shall not be secure from accident. Half shall enter, and half shall remain behind." The Emir Musa then entered the gate, and with him half of the people who bore their weapons of war. And the party saw their companions lying dead, so they buried them. They saw also the gatekeepers and the servants and chamberlains and lieutenants laying upon beds of silk, all of them dead. And they entered the market of the city and beheld that the shops were open, and the scales hung up, and the utensils of brass ranged in order, and the stores were full of all kinds of goods. And they saw the merchants dead and in their shops. Their skins were dried, and they had become examples to him who would be admonished. And they left this place and passed on to the silk market, in which were silks and brocades interwoven with red and gold, and white silver upon various colors, and the owners were dead. Lying upon skins and appearing almost as though they would speak. Leaving these, they went on to the market of jewels and pearls and jacinths, and they left it and passed on to the market of the money changers, whom they found dead, with varieties of silks beneath them, and their shops were filled with varieties of silks beneath them, and their shops were filled with gold and silver. These they left, and they proceeded to the markets of the perfumers, and lo, their shops were filled with varieties of perfumes, and bags of musk, and ambergris, and aloes wood, and camphor, and the owners were all dead, not having with them any food. And when they went forth from the market of the perfumers, they found near unto it a palace decorated and strongly constructed, and they entered it, and found banners unfurled, and drawn swords, and strung bows, and shields hung up by chains of gold and silver, and helmets gilded with red gold. And in the passage of that palace were benches of ivory, ornamented with plates of brilliant gold and with silk, on which were men, whose skins had dried upon the bones. The ignorant would imagine them to be sleeping. From the want of food they had died, and tasted mortality. And the Emir Musa went on into the interior of the palace. There he beheld a great hall, and 4 large and lofty chambers, each one fronting another, wide, decorated with gold and silver, and with various colors. In the midst of the hall there was a great fountain of alabaster, over which was a canopy of brocade. And in those chambers were fountains lined with marble, and channels of water flowed along the floors of those chambers, the 4 streams meeting in a great tank lined with marbles of various colors. The Emir Musa then said to the Sheikh Ab es-Samad, "Enter these chambers with us." So they entered the first chamber, and they found it filled with gold and with white silver, and pearls and jewels and jacinths and precious minerals. They found in it also chests full of red and yellow and white brocades. And they went thence to the second chamber, and opened a closet in it. And lo, it was filled with arms and weapons of war, consisting of gilded helmets and coats of mail, and swords and lances and maces, and other instruments of war and battle. Then they passed thence to the third chamber, in which they found closets having upon their doors closed locks, and over them were curtains worked with various kinds of embroidery. They opened one of these closets, and found it filled with weapons decorated with varieties of gold and silver and jewels. And they went thence to the fourth chamber, where they also found closets, one of which they opened, and they found it full of utensils for food and drink, consisting of various vessels of gold and silver, and saucers of crystal, and cups set with brilliant pearls, and cups of carnelian, and other things. So they began to take what suited them of those things, and each of the soldiers carried off what he could. And when they determined to go forth from those chambers, they saw there a door inlaid with ivory and ebony, and adorned with plates of brilliant gold. Over it was hung a curtain of silk worked with various kinds of embroidery, and upon it were locks of white silver, to be opened by artifice without a key. The Shika al-Samad therefore advanced to those locks, and he opened them by his knowledge and excellent skill, and the party entered a passage paved with marble, upon the sides of which were curtains, whereon were figured various beasts and birds, all these being worked with red gold and white silver, and their eyes were of pearls and jacinths. Whoever beheld them was confounded. They passed on and found a saloon constructed of polished marble and adorned with jewels. The beholder imagined that upon its floor was running water, and if anyone walked upon it, he would slip. The Emir Musa then therefore ordered the Sheikh Samad to throw upon it something that they might be enabled to walk on it. And he did this and contrived so that they passed on. And they found in it a great dome constructed of stones gilded with red gold. The party had not beheld in all that they had seen anything more beautiful than it. And in the midst of that dome was a great dome-crowned structure of alabaster, around which were lattice windows, decorated and adorned with oblong emeralds, such as none of the kings could procure. It was a pavilion of brocade raised upon columns of red gold, and within this were birds, the feet of which were emeralds. Beneath each bird was a net of brilliant pearls, spread over a fountain, and by the brink of the fountain was placed a couch adorned with pearls and jewels and jacinths, whereupon was a damsel resembling the shining sun. Eyes had not beheld one more beautiful. Upon her was a garment of brilliant pearls, on her head was a crown of red gold, with a fillet of jewels. On her neck was a necklace of jewels, in the middle of which were refulgent gems, and upon her forehead were two jewels, in the light of which was like that of the sun, and she seemed as though she were looking at the people and observing them to the right and left. When the Emir Musa beheld this damsel, he wondered extremely at her loveliness, and was confounded by her beauty, and the redness of her cheeks, and the blackness of her hair. Any beholder would imagine that she was alive, and not dead. And they said to her, "Peace be on thee, O damsel." But Talib said to the Emir, "May God amend thy state. Know that this damsel is dead. There is no life in her. How then can she return the salutation?" And he added, "O Emir, she is skillfully embalmed, and her eyes have been taken out after her death, and quicksilver hath been put beneath them, after which they have been restored to their places. So they gleam, and whenever the air putteth them in motion, the beholder imagineth that she twinkleth her eyes, though she is dead." And as to the couch upon which the damsel, and which was the damsel, it had steps, and upon the steps were two slaves, one of them white and the other black. And in the hand of one of them was a weapon of steel, and in the hand of the other a jeweled sword that blinded the eyes. And before the two slaves was a tablet of gold, whereupon was read an inscription, which was this: "In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, praise be to God, the creator of man, and he is the Lord of lords, and the cause of causes. O thou, if thou know me not, I will acquaint thee with my name and my descent. I am Tedmur, the daughter of the king of the Amalekites. I possessed what none of the kings possessed, and ruled with justice, and acted impartially towards my subjects. I gave and bestowed, and I lived a long time in the enjoyment of happiness. and an easy life, and possessing emancipated female and male slaves, though I did until the summoner of death came to my abode, and disasters occurred before me. And the case was this: 7 years in succession came upon us, during which no water descended on us from heaven, nor did any grass grow for us on the face of the earth. So we ate what food we had in our dwellings, and after that we fell upon the beasts and ate them, and there remained nothing. Upon this, therefore, I caused the wealth to be brought, and melted it with a measure, and sent it to by trusty men, who went about with it through all the districts, not leaving unvisited a single large city to seek for some food. But they found it not, and they returned to us with the wealth after a long absence. So therefore we, exposed to view our riches and our treasures, locked the gates of the fortresses in our city, and submitted ourselves to the decree of our Lord, committing our case to our master. And thus we all died, as thou beholdest, and left what we have built and what we have treasured. This is our story. Whoso arriveth at our city and entereth it, let him take the wealth and what he can, but not touch anything that is on my body, for it is the covering of my person. Therefore let him fear God, and not seize aught of it, for he would destroy himself. Peace be on you. I beg God moreover to save you from the evil of trials and sickness. The Emir Musa, when he heard these words, again wept, and was admonished by what he had witnessed. He then said to his companions, "Bring the sacks and fill them with part of these riches, and these vessels, and rarities and jewels." And thereupon Talib the son of Saul said to the Emir Musa, "O Emir, shall we leave this damsel with the things that are upon her? They are things that have no equal, nor is the like of them at any time found, and they are more than the riches thou hast taken, and will be the best present by which thou mayest integrate thyself with the Prince of the Faithful." But the Emir replied, "Heardest thou not which the damsel saith, what the damsel hath given as a charge, and the inscription upon this tablet? Moreover, and especially, she hath given it as a charge offered in confidence, and we are not of the people of treachery." The Vizier Talib, however, said, "And on account of these words wilt thou leave these riches and these jewels when she is dead? What then should she do with these things, which are the ornaments of the world and the decorations of the living? With a garment of cotton might this damsel be covered, and we are more worthy of the things than she." Then he drew near to the steps and ascended them until he reached the spot between the two slaves, when lo, one of these two smote him upon his back, and the other smote him with the sword that was in his hand, and struck off his head, and he fell down dead. So the Emir Musa said, "May God not regard with mercy thy resting place. There was in these riches a sufficiency, and covetousness doth dishonor the person whom it existeth." He thereupon gave orders for the entry of the troops, who accordingly entered, and they loaded the camels with part of those riches and minerals, after which the Emir Musa commanded them to close the gate as it was before. They then proceeded along the sea coast until they came in the sight of a high mountain overlooking the sea. In it were many caves, and lo, in these was a people of the blacks, clad in hides, and with burnouses of hides upon their heads, whose language was not known. And when they saw the troops, they ran away from them and fled, while their women and their children stood in the entrances of the caves. So the Emir Musa said, "O Sheikh Ab-es-Samad, what are these people?" And he answered, "These are the objects of the inquiry of the Prince of the Faithful." They therefore alighted, and the tents were pitched, and the riches were put down. And they had not rested when the king of the blacks came down from the mountain and drew near to the troops. He was acquainted with the Arabic language, wherefore when he came to the Emir Musa, he saluted them, and the Emir returned his salutation and treated him with honor. The king of the blacks said to the Emir, Are ye of mankind or of the jinn? The emirs answered, As to us, we are of mankind, and as to you, there is no doubt that ye are of the jinn, because of your seclusion in this mountain that is separated from the world, and because of the greatness of your make. But the king of the blacks replied, Nay, we are a people of the race of Adam, the sons of Ham, the son of Noah, on whom be peace. As to this sea, it is known by the name of El Krakar. The Emir Musa then said to him, We are the associates of King al-Islam, Abd el-Malik, the son of Marwan, and we have come on account of the bottles of brass that are here in your sea, and whereupon the devils are imprisoned from the time of Solomon, the son of David. He hath commanded us to bring him some of them, that he may see them and divert himself by the view of them. And the king of the blacks replied, Most willingly. Then he feasted him with fish, and ordered the divers to bring up from the sea some of the bottles of Solomon. And they brought up for them 12 bottles, wherewith the Emir Musa was delighted, and the Sheikh Ab-es-Samad also, and the soldiers, on account of the accomplishment of the affair of the Prince of the Faithful. The Emir Musa thereupon presented to the king of the blacks many presents, and gave him large gifts, in like manner too. The king of the blacks gave to the Emir Musa a present consisting of wonders of the sea. Then they bade him farewell, and they journeyed back until they came to the land of Syria, and went to the Prince of the Faithful, whereupon the Emir Musa acquainted him with all that he had seen, and all that had occurred to him with respect to the verses and histories and admonitions, and told him of the case of Talib, the son of Saul. And the Prince of the Faithful said to him, Would that I had been with you, that I might have beheld what ye beheld. He then took the bottles and proceeded to open one after another, and the devils came forth from them, saying, Repentance, O prophet of God! We will not return to the like conduct ever. And Abd el-Malik, the son of Marwan, wondered at this. After this, the Prince of the Faithful caused the riches to be brought before him, and divided them among the people. And he said, God hath not bestowed upon anyone the likes of you, what he had bestoweth upon Solomon the son of David. This is the end of which has come down to us of the history of the city of brass entire, and God is all-knowing.